So how's it going?
Going all right.
Long time no chat.
Yeah, that's right. I missed being with you.
Yeah. Let me flag that. Everything's muted. Well, that's good. There you go. Looks like you, oh, and see, you got the white screen on the side. That's gonna,
Yeah, and I got my roll top desk. This was my dad's
yeah,
1850s
yeah,
roll top.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that was made in like a British settlement, like in the Philippines or Indonesia somewhere. It's like a beautiful golden oak that you can't even find anymore.
Randy, thank you very much for joining today. I
I
really
like being
appreciate
thanked. That's good. Let's talk about me.
it. Oh, yes, let's talk about you.
Yeah.
Well, actually, so let's talk about you. How did you get here? What's been your journey to get to do what you do?
That's actually one of my favorite questions. And when I'm coaching people, I've been known to spend hours
Mm.
just on people's story, because I think your story is so essential to being this kind of coaching relationship where you're really sharing meaningfully. And it's remarkable. A lot of us don't get the chance to tell our story and have somebody who really cares to listen deeply. And it's a really rewarding and intimate thing when you give somebody the chance. And I'll say, start with your first memory, or tell me about your grandparents. Back them way up, and the stuff that comes out is almost always surprising to the storyteller. So we're not going to do that now, because my story would take a very long time to unpack. But the short of it is that I was a kid from born in Virginia, early years in the Northeast, moved to Australia at age 9. And a lot of your viewers know my brother Wes, and he's still based in Sydney, as are my sister Rebecca and my parents. So I feel like I was kind of raised in Australia. So I'm this weird hybrid American Australian. I went off to Duke, studied politics and psychology, met this beautiful young blonde nurse who I married during law school, and I'm still with and still crazy about. And came to Washington in the late 80s, practicing environmental law. To that I added energy, and then to that I added quite a bit of work with Congress. So I got to the point where in a typical year I was spending probably 30 or 40% of my time doing public policy work. And then I got invited to be the counsel to the head of the U.S. water program at EPA. I was still in my late 20s. I was a pretty senior position, great opportunity, and I got to learn how to write speeches, and traveled around the country in the U.S., and Europe, and then did some work in the Caribbean and Mexico border, the Maquiladoras, and was sort of talking about protecting wetlands and oceans and rivers and streams, which I love, being a Pisces. Then I went back to practice law. Rose to partner in a big Chicago firm, then a Manhattan Wall Street firm. Was doing really pretty well, and just had that innate sense that phase of my life, that arc of my life, was completed. That I had achieved what I wanted to achieve in big law, and that I was ready to do other things. So I guess I was 42 years old. I basically told the firm that I wanted a sabbatical, and they said, "Well, we don't have any sabbaticals for 42-year-old partners." And I said, "Well, that's fine, I'll quit." And they said, "Well, we'll give you a sabbatical." So I went back to Duke for a year and a half, more or less, as a senior fellow at the School of the Environment. Realized that I was really called to social justice work, and so I went back to my law firm, did resign. Started building my own consulting practice, joined about 7 nonprofit boards, started a rock and roll band, just started chasing my passions. So I feel that I'm a very fortunate person. I've been able to get away with pursuing my passions. And somewhere in that process, so this is about 15 years ago that I started sort of wandering off the reservation, I realized that people were coming to me with lots of leadership questions. And I don't know if it was because of my experience or I was a good listener or some combination, but I was doing it a lot. And the combination of that plus my board work, where I saw good organizations, bad organizations, and everything in between, I thought, well, maybe I should study this. And a guy that I respected a lot, a very successful executive coach, said, well, there's this program at the Institute for Transformational Leadership at Georgetown. So I went and spent a year, thinking deeply about these issues and reading a lot and dealing with my own crap and sort of, refocusing, and the last 4 years, I've been transitioning out of law. I still do a little bit of law and lobbying and public policy, but really my heart and emphasis has been on the coaching work.
So let me ask what might be a complicated question.
Okay.
We started chatting about this spring. As you mentioned, your brother's Wes. He's the director of DBEI, which most people know previously to that was RTC, Revit Technology Conference. That conference, I'm the director for marketing, work with the executive committee. That is an amazing technology conference with, over 4 events a year. I'll see close to 2,000 people that are the best of the best in the world. And what I've observed in the past 20 years, having worked for Revit, having worked for a lot of companies, helping them do technology transitions, worked with a lot of people that I got to know really well. And they've moved from roles where they are technical experts into roles where they're now managing people. And, the stresses that we had in our mid-30s are now different kinds of stresses that we're having in our 50s and mid-50s. And I don't know if this is a defined pattern or not. So help me you like to use the word unpack this. Help me unpack this. I have noticed that there are a multitude of deep technical experts that have no challenges managing technology. They love it. In some cases, I almost wonder if they prefer it. And now that it comes down to managing people and personalities, they struggle. Yes. And is that uncommon? I mean, these are deep technical experts. These are smart people. So yes. What is the disconnect? If there is a disconnect, help me understand that a little bit.
Well, you can start with the old adages. The old adages generally have some wisdom in them, that we get promoted to our point of incompetency, right? So for a lot of
comforting,
right? Yeah, present company excluded, of course.
Of course.
For a lot of technical people, and I've spent my whole career working with engineers and lawyers and people who are very detail oriented. We often gravitate to fields that put our innate talents to work, right? So we're all hardwired a certain way.
That's where we start. And then a good, healthy, balanced life journey is about acquiring the talents and skills that you don't have, right? But people tend to live where they're hardwired because it takes less energy to do it, right? I mean, it's a fascinating fact that our brains use 30% of our calories. So our brains conserve calories by building neural superhighways. You get to A to B as quickly as you can. And so there are certain skills that you over and over again, you build a certain way of doing them, and you don't re-examine them. So what I see with professionals and experts a lot is they get promoted into these roles where all of a sudden it's about building teams and relating to others and explaining yourself and sharing and being present and giving affirmation, all of which are important in those kinds of roles, but are maybe less important when you're sitting down with yourself and your laptop solving a problem. So I've worked with the university president, I've worked with some top docs, I've worked with tech CEOs, I've worked with executive committees of corporations, law firms, I've worked with 4 leaders of the national park system. They all bring different problems to the table, but a pretty common one is
you know, when you get past the basic, I'm having trouble managing up, you know, or managing down, or building a team, it's often how do I go from what I think of as sort of ego-driven leadership to servant-driven leadership. And that's a big, hard step for a lot of us, especially those of us who have very particular skills that we've built on and had a successful career out of. Because you go from, you know, sort of the, you know, the ego voice is saying, you know, how can I be a superstar? What's best for me? How am I gonna make people understand me? How, you know, and it's going to, how can I help my subordinates be superstars? How can I bring more talent into the organization rather than feeling threatened by somebody really smart coming in and think they're going to, you know, they're gunning for my position, right?
Right.
How can I benefit others? And it's something that is very acquirable, if that's a word, but it requires self-examination, and it requires self-awareness. And so much of what we do in coaching is really about cultivating self-awareness.
Okay.
And that's the start. That's sort of the base of the pyramid.
Let me ask a follow-up to that. So here's how I learned how to use Revit. I went to the crossroads, to use a musical analogy.
That's right.
And
yes.
I bought a cheap PC. I'm a Mac guy. I bought a cheap PC. Yeah. Ready to deal with the devil. Bought a cheap PC, got a copy of Revit, and every non-sleeping hour was spent going through all of the technical stuff to figure it out, and then creating a set of documents and trying to make everything work in Revit, not using any other tools. And that is a private, personal process. No one sees me fail because I'm coming home from work and I'm learning how to do things till really late at night and just thinking about it all the time. And so that process, that was a process of self-learning. That is a technical process. That's not from going to classes. There weren't classes. What you're talking about and how, what you're talking about with regard to learning about people, would it be fair to say that that process is not something that you can just squirrel yourself away with and intuitively learn how to do it through trial and error? You need someone who's done it before to guide the process.
So I would say that's true for many of us, but not all of us.
Okay.
So one of the things that I've spent the last 2 years in particular doing is acquiring some skills in very particular assessments. A lot of people are familiar with Myers-Briggs, for instance, which to me is a useful but kind of superficial entry-level assessment.
It's a start.
Yeah, it's a great start. I've been working with a tool recently called the Enneagram.
Yep.
And it's funny, it's one of those Malcolm Gladwell tipping point things, like how does a fairly obscure tool that's been around for literally millennia, all of a sudden you see kids at the airport reading Enneagram books and having Enneagram dinner parties. Like, how did that happen? But anyway, the Enneagram is a way of looking at the 9 styles, which I prefer to think of the 9 faces, the 9 ways that we present ourselves to the world, okay? And as you go around the dial, it basically falls into different triads: the heart triad, the head triad, and the gut triad. So there are people, and I think of the 7 style is sort of the joyful, adventurous, gregarious, outgoing. Those people are naturally the type of person you describe, who gravitate to teams, who work well in groups, who are very communicative, who are good sharers, who others, you know, sort of gravitate to. You know, the deep technical people are often really, really grounded into like the wise person, the effective person. They're data driven. Maybe they're more introverted. And so for those people, they can dig into a tool like you did and sort of decompile it and figure it out, and it's very exciting. But maybe it's not their natural instinct to then translate their learning into teaching for others.
Right.
Doesn't mean they can't do it. It means we tend to live in where we're hardwired, and then it takes more energy for us to reach out of our hardwiring, right? So that's a long-winded way of saying it really depends on sort of how you're made up, and then it depends on your devotion to building the skills you need to bridge the gaps that we all have when we move into other, relationships and other styles.
And you're confident that a technical person, if they go through this process and understand themselves and begin to perceive their own deficiencies, they can create a process or a skill set to remedy this, to be good at actually managing people?
Yes. That's
okay,
a great
good.
question.
Yeah.
It's a great hypothesis. I believe the answer is yes, but it starts with, is this woman, man ready to do it? Like, are they committed to doing it? And as I said, it starts with the deep work of, how am I showing up for people, right? You may have the biggest brain in the world and all the information and all this wisdom to share, but if you are not showing up as someone who's open to sharing, who wants to raise up other people, it's locked off, right? Okay. So it starts with building that awareness. How are you showing up? What are your core values? And do people see what your core values are? And are you someone who's going to, lift other people up, or are you just there for yourself? And if you're there for yourself, people will know that.
Okay.
And so, again, this is the deep work. It's the difference between what I call tactical coaching and transformational coaching. So tactical coaching is, like, I can give a specific example. I had an assistant secretary, so a Senate confirmed appointee, who was reporting to a member of the cabinet, who said, I know I have the experience, I have the resume, but I feel like I'm not being taken seriously by my boss. And so we went through the whole, how do you show up in a way where your hair's not on fire all the time, right? Just some very simple things, like taking 60 seconds before you walk into a meeting with the secretary to take 4 deep breaths and think about the one message you want to get through. Made all the difference in the world. That's tactical. The transformational work, which you get to after you deal with the tactical, is, okay, now that we've got that bit of it, what is your life goal? How do you want to balance your professional life, your public life, your private life, your family life? These are to me, the really deep, exciting things that change people's lives. I mean, that's a big, grandiose goal, but ultimately, I think that's what effective coaching is about.
So we've, when I reached out to you this spring and said, okay, I'm seeing this pattern. I think there's a need here. What do you think? And you kind of suspiciously aligned, like you were excited about it.
Well, I am, yeah.
And saw the need for it and why it's important. And so one of the things that we're doing is going off into a small retreat camp type environment. This is not for 5-star hotels.
Wait, what?
There's a lake. What's that?
I'm out.
I'm out. Where's my Hassenpfeffer? Yeah, there will be no Waldorf salad with the walnuts. It's a joke. So the idea is to go somewhere that we can be quiet. It's not about being polished. It's about being prepared and being thoughtful.
Right.
And why do you think an environment like that is important for something like that?
So it was great. It was fun, that very first call with you, because we were simpatico right away. Because we both were like, we need an unconference conference, right? We need a no PowerPoint conference. Where
we did that. Actually, we started defining the conference about all these things that wouldn't happen.
That wouldn't happen, right?
Yeah.
Right. And to me, again, we, and by this I mean lawyers and architects and engineers and other professionals, we're married to distraction. We live lives of sort of semi-attention all the time. Like, we're literally, yes, I don't think it's just, okay. There was a very rude gesture that I almost made, but we're being taped, so I held back. And so, you know, I think I mentioned this to you in one of our chats. I just read a new study that said that if you count all touches, clicks, swipes, glances, whatever, we're looking at our phone 2,600 times a day now, right? We're all addicted. And so I just really like the idea of separating from that, finding some quiet. I personally am nurtured by nature. I love being near the water. I love being in the woods. I love sitting next to a fire with a guitar. And intentionally choosing to be quiet, intentionally choosing to disconnect a little bit from technology and see what bubbles up. And for some people, what bubbles up is going to be challenging. They're going to be surprised what comes into their mind in a period of quiet and reflection. And it's those moments that really help you assess where you are, you know, in your life. And, you know, spiritually, and I don't mean religiously, I mean just physically, how you're manifesting. And I think it's a great opportunity for people to just sort of check out and take their own pulse. And then if they're brave, do a little work. And if they're braver, do a little bit of sharing and get a little bit of feedback from their peers. And you can create, I prefer the word brave space to safe space. I like brave spaces where people really get into some truth telling and say, you know, I spent the last 30 minutes sitting in the woods and it was so damn hard not to pick up my phone. All I kept thinking about was work. And then it got to me, was like, well, why am I only thinking about work? I'm more than that, you know, right? And you have some sharing, and you're going to find there's lots of people in the same boat as you, and you might have a revelation, or you might just identify a struggle that you need to struggle with, but that's part of the journey.
Well, we're looking for a group of, you know, I would like the group size. I think we discussed this, you know, at a minimum around 25. So there's a nice critical mass, nice core, no more than 50, so that it's not, so everybody starts to know each other without a name tag. That's another thing, like no name tags, just know people's names. Don't wear no collars, right? I mean, not the collar, like, you know, the collar with a tag on it. No, just know people by their face. And so that's a good, you think that's a good group? Like
I do. I mean, yeah, I've worked, you know, anywhere from 6 people to 1,000 people, and that's sort of the sweet spot, like you say, where you can actually get a little bit of the sense of the individual. That's much more fun. It's more meaningful.
Randy, thank you for this. I appreciate this overview.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're going to bring your guitar.
I am definitely bringing a guitar.
I am not a professional musician. I don't have a band. But I'll probably bring my guitar as well, and I hope everybody else will bring their instrument of flavor. So,
yeah, man.
Thanks, buddy. I really appreciate it. Chat to you soon.
Cheers. Bye.